Captain Maya Chun squinted at the massive obsidian ships darkening Earth's skies. While others around her trembled, she simply sipped her coffee and muttered, "Well, this should be interesting." The Zarthan invasion began like all their conquests, with overwhelming force and terrifying displays of power. Their ships, resembling massive predatory insects carved from volcanic glass, hovered over major cities worldwide. Their declaration was simple: surrender or be eradicated. Commander Xarik, war leader of the Third Zarthan Fleet, watched through enhanced optics as humans reacted to their arrival. He expected the usual mass panic, chaos, immediate capitulation from leaders. Instead, he observed something disturbing. While some humans ran, others stood recording with primitive devices. Some even waved. One child held a sign reading, "Cool alien ships. They don't understand the threat," Xarik hissed to his second-in-command Vrex. "Begin the demonstration." The Zarthan obliterated an uninhabited island as a warning. The explosion was visible from space, creating tsunamis that threatened coastal regions. At UN headquarters, world leaders gathered in emergency session. General Ibrahim Santos slammed his fist on the table. "We faced extinction before nuclear war, climate collapse, pandemics. We survived those threats we created ourselves. You think some oversized bugs scare us?" Maya Chun, now representing Earth's unified defense, addressed the assembly. "The Zarthan expect us to cower. Their entire conquest strategy depends on psychological domination before physical invasion. But they've never encountered a species that turned their own fears into entertainment." She displayed images, horror movies, roller coasters, extreme, sports, haunted houses. Humans are the only known species that deliberately seeks out fear as recreation. We've evolved to find thrill in terror. Meanwhile, Zarthan scouts captured a small human outpost in rural Montana. Their prisoner, farmer Jack Reynolds, sat calmly in interrogation. "You will reveal Earth's defense capabilities," Rex demanded. Jack chuckled. "Son, I've survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, lost my farm to tornadoes twice, beat cancer, and raised teenage daughters. You're going to need to try harder than that." Rex was confounded. The biomonitors indicated the human wasn't bluffing. Number. Fear response registered. Commander Xarik received the interrogation report with growing unease. Their psychological warfare, the cornerstone of Zarthan conquest, wasn't working. "Perhaps they're simply primitive," offered his strategist, "too underdeveloped to comprehend their situation." "No," Xarik replied, studying footage of humans continuing daily routines despite Zarthan ships overhead. "They understand perfectly. They simply don't care." As night fell over Earth, the Zarthan expected to see cities darkened in terror. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. Light shows projected onto their ships, impromptu street parties beneath their hulls, and in New York, a massive banner unfurled. "We've survived ourselves. You're just visitors." Xarik felt something alien to his species. Doubt. What manner of prey laughs at the predator? Mander Xarik paced the command deck, mandibles clicking in agitation. 3 days into what should have been a simple conquest, and the humans were celebrating? Their information network's primitive, but extensive, buzzed with means comparing Zarthan warriors to characters from something called video games. "They're treating this like entertainment," hissed Science Officer Nexra, displaying intercepted broadcasts. "Look at this, they're holding apocalypse parties and creating merchandise with our likeness." Xarik's inner eyelids narrowed. "Commence ground invasion. Let's see if they laugh with our warriors at their doorsteps." In Chicago, Dr. Eliza Washington worked frantically in her psychology lab. As both a combat veteran and behavioral scientist, she understood humanity's unusual response better than most. "It's not that we're fearless," she explained to the international research team. "It's that we're fear specialists. We've evolved to process terror differently." Her colleague, Professor Hiroshi Tanaka, nodded. "Throughout human history, we've faced extinction-level threats, many self-created. We developed psychological mechanisms to function despite existential dread. Across the globe, Zarthan dropships deployed warriors 9-foot-tall chitinous. Predators with 4 arms and biomechanical weapons fused to their exoskeletons. They expected screaming masses. Instead, many encountered empty street civilians and evacuated efficiently, following disaster protocols developed during climate catastrophes decades earlier. In London, a Zarthan squad cornered a group of teenagers in an underground station. Strike leader Thraz anticipated satisfying terror. Instead, one Tina girl with colorful hair stepped forward. "You guys look exactly like the boss from Cosmic Invaders 3, she said, apparently recording with her device. The graphics were better in the game, though. Her companions laughed. Thraz roared in frustration, but the teens simply backed away strategically through prepared escape routes, still bantering. Meanwhile, military resistance proved unexpectedly effective. Humans fought with desperate creativity rather than disciplined fear. When Zarthan technology jammed communications, neighborhood networks activated with pre-digital backups, paper maps, bicycle messengers, and coded light signals. At a forward operating base in former Kenya, Captain Maya Chun briefed Mixed Nation Special Forces. The Zarthan have never encountered asymmetrical warfare. Their conquests rely on overwhelming force against conventional opposition. We'll use that expectation against them. Young Lieutenant Darius Williams raised his hand. "So basically, they're playing chess while we're playing Calvin ball?" Laughter rippled through the room. Chun smiled. "Exactly. They expect rules. We've survived by breaking them." On the Zarthan command ship, a disturbing report reached Xarak. Captured human soldiers weren't begging for mercy. They were telling jokes to their guards. One prisoner had apparently been teaching Zarthan warriors something called rock, paper, scissors. "This defies all conquest protocols," Vrex muttered. "Perhaps their brains are structured differently?" Xarak studied Earth's historical records with growing unease. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, yet persisted. They turned their apocalyptic fears into stories, games, and art. How does one conquer a species that had already faced its own extinction and transformed that terror into strength? Asterisk in detention facility Gamma 7. Converted from a human sports arena, war. Leader Xarak personally observed the strangest prisoners his species had ever encountered. 3 weeks into the invasion, and the humans in captivity displayed behaviors that defied all Zarthun understanding of conquered species. They organized games, formed social hierarchies based on skills rather than strength, and most disturbing of all maintained hope despite clear defeat. Some even seemed to be studying their captors with scientific curiosity. "You're not conventional predators," noted Dr. Eliza Washington, now a high-value prisoner being interrogated by Xarak himself. "You're conquest specialists who evolved predatory characteristics. Fascinating evolutionary convergence. You speak as though you're the researcher and I the specimen," Xarak hissed. Washington smiled. "Aren't we both? I'm learning about you. You're learning why your usual methods aren't working on us." In another sector, young Zarthun scout Revik was assigned to guard a group of human children evacuated from a destroyed hospital. Standard Zarthun procedure was to separate offspring from adults to ensure compliance. Yet these young were not. Cowering, they had organized a complex game involving drawn circles and small objects. "What are you doing?" Revik demanded. A small human girl looked up. "Playing marbles. Want to learn?" "It's boring just standing there." Against all training, Revik found himself curious. These offspring showed no appropriate prey response. When he reported this anomaly, his superior threatened punishment for insufficient intimidation. Meanwhile, resistance forces led by Captain Shun had discovered a critical weakness. Zarthan relied heavily on pheromone-based communications alongside technology. Human chemical engineers developed compounds that disrupted these signals, creating confusion in Zarthan ranks. They communicate like insects, explained Professor Tanaka via secure channel. But they think like conquerors, not a hive mind. Disrupt their chemical signals, and their hierarchical psychology works against them. Outside Denver, Zarthan, patrol discovered an elderly human tending a garden despite evacuation orders. Lieutenant Darius Williams, operating undercover, observed as the warriors confronted the man. "You should flee, human," the patrol leader growled. The gardener shrugged. "Lived through 2 world wars, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Stage 4 cancer. Death and I are old friends. But my tomatoes need tending, and I'm not leaving them." The patrol withdrew, visibly unsettled. Back on the command ship, Science Officer Nexra made a disturbing presentation. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet tried to kill them. Constantly extreme weather, predators, disease. Then they began killing each other in organized warfare, developing increasingly efficient methods. When they finally achieved global dominance, they nearly destroyed themselves through nuclear weapons, climate alteration, and engineered pathogens. Zarek's inner eyelids flickered. And yet they survived. Not just survived, Nexra corrected. They processed these existential threats psychologically. They created entertainment from their fears. They turned the concept of their own extinction into games. Zarek studied footage of human children, playing Apocalypse using debris from Zarthan attacks as props in their game. What manner of species turns their own annihilation into play? He whispered. Amidst the ruins of Jakarta, Scout Mevik's patrol encountered unexpected resistance. Not military, but a lone human protecting an improvised shelter full of various small, non-human organisms. Domestic companions, he realized, pets in human terminology. "Stand aside," ordered Patrol Leader Gratz. "This structure will be cleared." The human identified as Omar Patel, veterinarian, stood his ground. "These animals have done nothing. To you, they're innocent." "Irrelevant," Gratz hissed, raising his weapon. Something in Revik shifted. Throughout weeks of invasion, he'd observed humans risking themselves for others, not just their own kind, but for any creature they deemed worthy of protection. It contradicted everything Zarthan understood about dominant species behavior. Gratz fired. Revik moved without thinking, deflecting the shot with his own armored body. The patrol froze in shock at this unprecedented violation of hierarchy. Treasonous behavior. Gratz shrieked, "You protect prey." Revik stood between his commander and the human. "They are not what we thought. This requires further study." Across the globe, similar incidents multiplied. Some Zarthan warriors, particularly younger scouts with more direct human contact, reported confusion about conquest protocols. The species they'd come to subjugate didn't fit any known classification. In detention facility Gamma 7, Commander Xarik continued his interviews with Dr. Washington. "You're young," he clicked. "They play at disaster. They simulate their own deaths in these video games. Why?" Washington considered carefully. "We process fear through imagination. By playing with our nightmares, we master them. And this behavior evolved naturally?" "Not exactly," she explained. "It's cultural adaptation. Humans faced extinction-level threats repeatedly. Those who could function despite fear survived. Eventually, we developed complex psychological mechanisms: gallows, humor, disaster rehearsal, even finding community through shared danger. Meanwhile, Captain Chun's resistance forces implemented Operation Mythology, strategic attacks, designed not to win militarily, but to create legends that would spread among both humans and Zarthan. We can't outgun them, Chun told her international coalition. But we can outnarrate them. Psychological warfare works both ways. Lieutenant Williams led a mission that rescued children from a Zarthan research facility, but deliberately left Zarthan observers unharmed to witness humans prioritizing their young over revenge. At Zarthan High Command, the unthinkable occurred. Revik, now designated a deviant, was brought before the War Council with Omar Patel. Their unexpected alliance, Zarthan protecting a human protecting animals, had spread through information networks on both sides. Humans don't fear us because they've already faced worse, Revik testified. They've faced themselves. Their history is filled with horrors we cannot imagine, yet they've transformed these horrors into strength. As evidence, he displayed human cultural artifacts, children's drawings from refugee camps showing Zarthan as characters in stories, not nightmares. Improvised memorials where humans honored their dead without abandoning hope. Communities sharing, diminishing resources rather than fighting over them. This is not a species that can be conquered through fear, Revik concluded. They've mastered fear in ways we cannot comprehend. Commander Xarek stood before the full Zarthan War Council, facing unprecedented scrutiny. 2 months into what should have been a simple conquest, and the mighty Zarthan fleet was trapped in a psychological quagmire unlike anything in their expansionist history. The humans have infiltrated our communications, he reported grimly, not through technology, but through ideas. Our younger warriors are questioning conquest protocols after direct human contact. High Marshal Zorn's mandibles clicked in fury. Then eliminate all prisoners. Remove the contamination. Science Officer Nexra intervened. With respect, that would only validate what the deviant Revik claimed, that we fear what we don't understand. Meanwhile, the human resistance enacted the final phase of their strategy. Not military victory impossible against Zarthan technology, but something more profound. Throughout our history, Captain Chun addressed the United Human Forces. We've survived by adapting, by finding humor in darkness, by facing nightmares head-on. The Zarthan expected us to break under pressure, but pressure is humanity's forge. Their plan was audacious, synchronized global demonstrations not of military might, but of humanity's unique relationship with fear. In camps, cities, and ruins worldwide, humans created art from destruction, held celebrations amidst devastation, and most importantly shared these manifestations with their Zarthan captors. Dr. Washington, still in detention, explained to increasingly attentive Zarthan guards, "You evolved as apex predators who became conquerors. We evolved as prey who became something else entirely, creatures who transformed terror into transcendence." The turning point came unexpectedly. At a contested zone in former Brazil, a young Zarthan warrior encountered a human child drawing elaborate chalk figures on broken concrete. The warrior recognized himself in the drawing, not as a monster, but as a character in a story where humans and Zarthan ultimately cooperated. "Why do you draw this false future?" The warrior demanded. The child looked up without fear. "All futures are false until we make them true." The exchange, captured and transmitted globally, crystallized the fundamental miscalculation in Zarthan strategy. They had expected a species that would either flee from predators or fight with desperate fear. Instead, they found a species that had transcended the predator-prey dynamic entirely. On the Zarthan command ship, Xarek made an unprecedented decision. He requested direct negotiation with human representatives, not for surrender terms, but for mutual understanding. "We have conquered 17 worlds," he told Captain Chun, Dr. Washington, and other human leaders. "None responded as yours has. Those Species hadn't nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, Chan replied simply. We have confronted our own capacity for self-annihilation. After that, external threats gain ... perspective. As the historic meeting concluded, Lieutenant Williams asked the question that had haunted Xarek. What happens when humans stop laughing in the face of danger? Dr. Washington answered, That's when we're most dangerous. When humor fails, we don't surrender to fear, we transform it into resolve. The Zarthan withdrawal began gradually not defeat, as they carefully emphasized, but strategic reassessment. They left observers, ostensibly to monitor human activity. In reality, these selected warriors, including the now rehabilitated Mrevik, were there to learn. For the first time in their evolutionary history, the Zarthan had encountered a species that had evolved beyond the paradigm of predator and prey. Humans hadn't just survived their own worst impulses. They had developed cultural adaptations that turned existential terror into strength. As the massive ships departed Earth's atmosphere, Xarek gazed at the blue planet, a world where the prey had learned to laugh at predators, where fear itself had become a resource rather than a weakness. They were never truly prey, he realized, and perhaps we were never truly predators. We were simply the next test in their long history of facing the unthinkable. And somewhere on Earth, humans were already turning their encounter with the Zarthan into stories for children, not to frighten, but to remind future generations that fear, properly understood, becomes courage. Asterisk.